my colleague Unathi Batyashe, as of course promised, is at the Nerve Centre, the IEC Results Operations Centre in Midrand, and of course joins us now. So Unathi, a very good afternoon to you. A lot has been happening, of course, on day 2 of those special votes. Cut-off time is 5 p.m. A lot of incidences reported yesterday. So talk to us about some of the reports that we've been getting today. Particularly, we're hearing that some whole communities are either in protest or being barred from actually going ahead to exercise their democratic rights.
Indeed, Alicia, and a very good afternoon to you and, of course, our viewers. Yes, a lot of developments over the past 2 days. Today is day 2 of those special votes. And there are, of course, concerns that the IEC has tried to clarify in as far as those special votes are concerned. I am coming to you, as you've said, live from the IEC's Results Operations Centre right here in Midrand. Of course, this is the nerve centre for the IEC. It will also be the hub for political parties as well as observers, and of course we are in conversations with various political analysts. But just to go back to your point about the incidents that we've been seeing and hearing about on social media, and of course also from our reporters, well, the IEC has said that it will clarify some of those. Yesterday it held its press briefing with the media, of course, just giving a report back in terms of what was happening on day 1 of those special votes. At the time of the briefing, around about 4 o'clock, it had indicated that around about 2 p.m., the IEC had already facilitated about over 200,000, people who went to conduct their special votes. And of course it will be, as you've also said in your intro, conducting those home visits to over 600,000 people. So 1.6 million people had indicated that they will be voting in the special vote. The IEC saying it's not concerned as yet in terms of the turnout, because we still have today, as you've also said, closing happening at 5 p.m. But we'll continue to look at developments then in terms of what is happening, for instance, in the Eastern Cape, where in some areas, particularly in Tata, several voting stations, were closed and voters could not vote because of what the IEC calls isolated violent incidents. But authorities say they are on top of it. So we'll continue then to be in conversation with our journalists who are on the ground in as far as that is concerned. But for now, Alicia, I am in conversation with Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Thank you so much, Prof, for your time this afternoon. So, there's a lot to unpack. I want us to start then with, the recent developments. What's happening with the IEC already? And concerningly, we are seeing, misinformation and disinformation already circling. Just talk to us about, the importance of the IEC, particularly getting on top of some of these incidents that, we are hearing. In some instances, voting stations not being opened. In some instances, law enforcement authorities having to be brought in, just to make sure that there is no violence in certain areas.
I think so far so good, and everything has gone according to plan. But with regard to the security threats which are posing a danger to democracy, I don't think that the IEC is at fault in that regard, because the IEC has done its job in terms of rolling out voter education, but it must be noted that there's a symbiotic relationship between voter education and the slow pace of service delivery. So one of the things that is making people not to vote is the slow pace of service delivery, not necessarily the role of the IEC of teaching the importance of democracy to the audience.
Yeah. Tomorrow, of course, it's the big day. We are heading to the main election. We've seen, of course, the special votes as we're discussing. We've seen our expats having already voted. Heading to tomorrow's election, what are for you your biggest takeouts? Just looking at how political parties have, over the past couple of months, tried to persuade voters, to vote for their particular party, and giving them a number of promises, I must say. Just up to this point, just some of your biggest takeouts.
I think the significance of this year's election is that one-party dominance is a thing of the past, and that the hegemony of the ANC has been dealt with a blow. And the possibility that the ANC might lose power is not far-fetched. Even though I think if you examine at close range the political spectrum, you will realize that we have a very fragmented political spectrum, and that gives the ANC an upper hand. But I think voters are looking forward to tomorrow, largely because, I think they've been let down by the powers that be. However, I don't think that we should compare this year's election with the one in 1994. Because 1994 was very special, and there will never be another 1994, largely because black people voted for the first time, and there was a lot of hype and so on.
I think a lot of young people especially would agree with you on that, because many of them, of course, weren't necessarily there during 1994, and so the symbolism really rests with their parents and, the older society. But concerningly, of course, people are saying that there is a possibility that what we are likely seeing this time around, as we probably have been seeing in 2019, is voter apathy.
Yes.
Is there voter apathy?
I think there is, and the notion of voter apathy, in my opinion, started in 1994. Again, this supports my thesis, because in 1994, the turnout was high, but then voter apathy started to showcase itself in 1999. Largely because I think young people are affected by a lot of social ills. If you look at unemployment at the moment, it is sitting at 34%, and it is worse amongst the youth. So I think that is what is making young people to basically not want to vote, with an intention of punishing the powers that be. However, even if you don't vote, someone else is going to vote for you.
Yeah.
So there's no point of not voting. And young people are future leaders, so they need to vote and take a stand against social ills.
How concerned should we be, about voter turnout? Because we saw, of course, in 2019, the drastic decline, just under 1 million people not coming out to vote after indicating that they would. So let's look at the stats this year. We are sitting at 27.7 million registered voters. There is a big, of course, cohort in that number of, I think, 17 million that sits around 30 to 59 years old. And of course, the youth just holding a marginal number, in terms of that. So how important then is it that instead of, having their voices be spoken, that they should actually come in their numbers to then bring in the change that they want to see?
So first of all, the majority of voters who are eligible to vote, it's young people. But secondly, lower voter turnout, it begs the question as to whether can we accept the results or not. Because if people don't vote on a large scale, then it means that the results don't reflect the majority of people. So it is a threat to a democracy.
What does that mean then for political parties? Let's say we look at the numbers of 2019, that we stand with a situation where, in fact, we have a lower voter turnout than we saw in 2019. What does that then mean for political parties? Let me help you out and say maybe the top 3 current top parties, the ANC, the DA, and the EFF.
My view is that the issue of voter turnout amongst young people should not be limited to South Africa. It's a global phenomenon. Because I think young people, basically, they don't want to participate in a process that doesn't reward them. So now we see basically a manifestation of individualism by them opting out of formal politics because they feel let down by the powers that be. So I think the only thing that political parties can do to ignite the interest amongst young people is to make sure that services are rendered to the youth, create jobs for young people, make sure that the young people are able to make ends meet, and their is basically improved.